Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Please consider subscribing and check out our Patreon for more. Enjoy the video. 6 months ago, my cousin Sarah and my older sister Hannah asked me for a small favor. After that, my life as Andrew started to change in a big way. Sarah wasn't doing well in calculus at the university we all went to, but I had already gotten an A in it the semester before. As a fine arts major, Sarah was annoyed that she had to take a math class, which may have been why she didn't do as well as she could have. Sarah was very worried when she found out that if she didn't pass the final, which was that afternoon, she would have to take the course over again. That's when she and Hannah brought me to their dorm room and begged me to take the final for Sarah. At first, I laughed when they said I would look like Sarah if they could make me look like her. They looked at each other, and then at the skinny, 5'10", long-legged figure in front of them. "No problem," they said. Hannah made me go into the bathroom and told me to shower and shave. After I dried off, I found that they had left me a pair of opaque white leggings. Hannah told me to get dressed as she walked out the door. I'd seen Hannah do this a few times, but it wasn't as easy as it seemed to get the toe and heel to line up. After a lot of twisting and pulling, I was able to get the material over my legs. My long legs were starting to look very feminine. I've never really cared much about fashion, and I usually dress for comfort rather than to make a statement. What was I trying to say when I was dressed like a girl? How could I look my sister and her friend in the eye? After a few minutes of struggling with these feelings, Hannah poked her head in and asked if I was having a problem. I turned away from her, red-faced. My sister took my hand and led me into the small dorm room with a small smile on her face. Sarah stood by one of the beds with a pile of clothes all over the place as she tried to put an outfit together. Hannah put me on the edge of the other bed. With a quick swipe of her hand over my face, she took off my tortoiseshell glasses and began putting on a light foundation and rose blush to my cheeks. Soft golds and honey mustards were painted on my eyelids with a brush, and black mascara made my eyelashes thicker. Hannah took a step back, then filled in my lips with a pale red pencil and glossed them. The smell of the makeup made me shiver slowly. Hannah asked softly, "Feels good, doesn't it?" Again, I turned away because I was so embarrassed. "Here," she said, handing me back my glasses. "Go inside and clean up. We'll have something for you to wear." With my glasses on, I walked into the bathroom again. In the mirror, I saw a face that was soft and almost cute. When I spoke, the image came with it. I just stood there in shock for a long time, and if Hannah hadn't called to see if I was ready, I might still be there. "In a minute," I said. When I came out of the bathroom again, Sarah was holding up a pair of jet black jeans and a gray silk front blouse with faux pearl buttons. She told me, "These will look great on you." Then she made me sit on the bed and put the jeans on. They almost didn't fit over my leggings, but I was able to get them around my waist by pulling and dragging. Sarah then put the shirt over my arms and buttoned it up. Hannah came out of her closet with a pair of black granny boots with 2-inch stacked heels. The fit was very tight, but I was able to squeeze my heels in and put the tights on and then tie the laces. My foot now had a provocative arch, and the narrow tip of my big toe made it look even smaller. When I stood up, the heels were uncomfortable, but they weren't too bad, even though my calves hurt. I took a few steps around the room, and I could feel my hips realigning. Soon, I was sure I wasn't going to fall over. When I looked down, I saw that my tight jeans were stuck to my legs and that the cuffs showed off my very girly ankles and feet. Sarah finally made me sit down again and put a short wig with auburn highlights over my brown hair. My bangs tickled my forehead and fell over my cheeks and neck. "Just don't scratch too much," Sarah told me, as she led me back into the bathroom by the hand. When we stood next to each other, we did look enough alike that someone who didn't know Sarah very well probably wouldn't be able to tell us apart. "So, you'll do it," Sarah said to the mirror with a smile. "What?" For a moment, I didn't know what she was talking about, but then I realized what this was all about. I mumbled, "You want me to go out? No one will know. Trust me." She turned and stared right at me. "Please." My heart was racing, but I nodded. "Were you afraid or excited, or even both? How could I study for a math test when I was so excited? Then there are just a few finishing touches, Hannah said. She pulled me away from the mirror and set me on the bed. She took my hands in hers and started giving me a manicure. Soon, my nails were round and drying with a pale rose-red color. Sarah put her favorite bracelets on my right wrist and frowned at my ears. "Too bad they're not pierced," she said, and then she turned and looked in the top drawer of her dresser. She pulled a pair of white moonstone earrings out of an old box. "Don't worry," Sarah whispered as she moved my hair out of my ear. "These are just clip-ons," she told me. She put them on my ears, and at first, the weight on my lobes was strange. Hannah told me to shake my head. As I did this, my hair fell back into place and my earrings lightly hit the top of my head. When the earrings stopped moving, I felt less of their weight, but I could still feel pressure on my earlobes. Sarah peered through the window. "It's time to go," she said, as she sprayed her favorite perfume on my neck and smiled. Hannah was now at the door. She had a black backpack made of patent leather, and she gave me a small purse with Sarah's ID in it, and a watch with a thin band. She was leading me out the door and into the hallway as she gave me these things. As we ran out of the dorm and down the hallway to the lecture halls, I fumbled with the pack strap to get it over my shoulder. When I finally got the pack where it needed to be, I realized I was outside, dressed like a woman. Only 2 guys kept staring at me, but no one else paid attention. By the time we got to the lecture hall, my toes were pinching together because of the heels. Hannah gave me a light peck on the cheek and said, "Good luck. We'll be here in a couple of hours to pick you up," they said. I nodded, opened the door, and walked into the hall. A teacher's aide gave me my ID. They gave me a seat number and a blue book after a quick look. Within minutes, the test started, and I found it hard to pay attention because I was feeling a lot of different things. I took a deep breath and focused on the information, and then the test was over. When I was done, I went outside and I looked for Hannah, but I didn't see anyone I knew. I started to feel scared, so I took a deep breath. I put my head down and decided to walk as quickly as I could back to the safety of my dorm. As I headed for the door to the hall, my heels clicked loudly in my ears. The doorknob with painted fingernails made me feel even more anxious. Finals were over and it was getting dark, so there were more people on campus than there had been earlier. I just wanted to go back to my dorm and change into my own clothes. I was so focused on going home that I didn't hear the voice behind me. I thought I was going to have a heart attack when a hand touched my shoulder. Someone knew, and I was going to be found out and kicked out of school. Life was over for me. I turned, but I didn't look up because I was too embarrassed. "Sorry," said the low voice. "I didn't mean to scare you, but you left this in the hall." A hand offered the black patent leather backpack. I said, "Thanks," as softly as I could, and reached for the backpack. "What did you think of the test?" I saw a pair of worn-out white Nikes. Why did this person talk to me? Why couldn't he just stop bothering me? "Not bad," I said, trying hard not to let the anxiety that was making my chest hurt come out in my voice. With one hand on the backpack, I started to walk away. "What did you get for 16?" he asked as he walked next to me. I couldn't think of anything and stopped moving. I could only say, 16? "Yeah," he said, and he stopped too. I could feel his body too close to mine. Even with my heels on, the guy was at least a head taller than me. How was I going to get out of this? "The one about the orbits," he said. He paused, and I could see his head shaking in the shadow on the ground. "I got stuck on that one. I did the rest and then went back, but I'm not sure I did it right. What did you do?" I pushed up on my glasses, which had slipped down my nose because I was sweating. The problem on the exam came into focus, and I quietly started to talk about the steps I'd taken to solve it. I was so caught up in what I was doing that I suddenly realized I was staring this guy in the face. He had a buzz cut, which made the dark fuzz on the side of his white scalp shine. One of his gray eyes was looking at me from his profile, and that's when I stopped talking. "Sorry," he looked away. "I didn't mean to stare, but I don't remember seeing you around before." I swallowed, and fear literally shook through me because he'd seen my Adam's apple move. He had to, because I could feel it in my throat moving 2 miles, but he just kept staring at my face. I swung the backpack up and slipped one strap over my right arm. He reached out and held the other strap for me. "Thanks," I said, as my shoulder brushed against his hand. What had happened? This was a guy, and I was a guy, too. Only I didn't look much like a guy, and I wasn't sure I felt much like one either. He was looking at me again. I said, "Look, I really have to go. I have another final tomorrow." I took a step away, and he didn't follow. "Thanks for the bag," I said, then turned around and tried to move as quickly as I could without looking like I was running. I had made it, but I hadn't because a second later he was pacing with me. "What do you have planned for tomorrow?" Medieval philosophy. That was true, but I wouldn't take it as Sarah. "Hey, I still have my class notes, and I did get an A on the final. Could you use some help?" "Andy sure could," said the new boy, and thanks God it was Hannah. It only took 2 seconds for me to go from being relieved from seeing Hannah and thinking that this was all over to being confused when she called me a girl's name and said I needed someone to study with. Andy would like some company tonight. Sarah and I are going out, and she'll be all alone. She's a little shy, don't you think? He didn't say anything for a moment. "If it's okay with you?" he asked again, looking at me with those gray eyes. What did he see? How did I look? What did it matter? Hannah was smiling from ear to ear when I looked at her. Hannah told him which dorm building we were in and what time to meet us there. She nodded her head, and I whispered, "Okay. See you later tonight, Andy. My name is Andrew, by the way," he said with a smile. As Hannah and I walked away, I could barely move my legs. My sister just set me up on a date with another guy whose name was the same as mine. Emotions ran and ran as they ran into each other, and I was lost in a maze of doubt and exciting fear. Back in the privacy of my dorm room, I started to cry for some reason. Hannah put me on the bed and gently rocked me back and forth by putting her arms around my shoulders. When I was done, she held on to me. I finally croaked, "How could you do that to me? You mean you don't want to study with Andrew tonight?" "I mean, set me up. Come on, Hannah, he's going to find out I'm a guy, and then I'll really be in trouble." I gently pulled her away from me. "You don't look like a guy right now." "I know what I look like." "No, you don't. I'm just surprised that more of them didn't try to talk to you." She ruffled my bangs. She held my cheeks while smiling. "As my little brother, you were never very impressive. But as my little sister, you're almost perfect." "But that's the thing, Hannah. I'm not your sister." I stood up, and all my feelings swirled around me again. Hannah looked up from the bed when she heard, "You can be if you want to be." She paused and looked up at the ceiling before saying, "How about this? Let's get you cleaned up and into a dress," she said. "No, I can't do this, Hannah." "And why not? Because you're a guy, I'm just scared," I told her. When I turned away from her, I could see in the bathroom mirror that my tears had messed up some of my makeup. "What are you afraid of? That you might enjoy it?" I started to quietly cry again as Hannah said what I couldn't say. As I cried, my shoulders rounded forward and my makeup got even worse. Then Hannah picked me up and held me again. After I stopped, she took my backpack off and led me to the bathroom. "Take a long, hot shower and then we'll talk," she said. I nodded and took off the wig and all the accessories. I took off my shoes while balancing on one leg. As soon as I stood flat-footed again, my toes felt better, but my calves hurt just as much. I tried to let the water wash away the strong feelings that had felt so immediate and scary. What did you think would happen? Why was I forced to decide? Why did everyone have to bother me so much? When I dried off after what seemed like hours, my wish had come true. The room was empty. I lay down on the bed and fell asleep, feeling better. When I woke up, I was glad to find that I was still alone. I went to look for the clothes I'd worn earlier in the day. As I moved around the small room, I kept seeing Hannah's or Sarah's clothes, but none of mine. All I saw was a white leather skirt set. I closed my eyes as I thought about how good the leather smelled. I stepped into it right away. The skirt sang out from just above my knee to just below my belly button. But something was still missing. Shoes. There were lots of different styles and colors of shoes at the bottom of the girls' closets. But when I saw the black vinyl knee-high boots, I knew they went with the skirt. I stood on the 3-inch heels and 1/2-inch platforms by pulling up the zippers. I looked down at my body, which was now covered in a white leather top, skirt, and boots. I struggled with how I felt and how I looked as I laid in bed. That random thought scared me, but also made me fill with joy. What was going on? Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out Patreon for a lot more content and early access to YouTube videos.